I go on a hike about once every 2 months, so I figured I should probably get the most durable tactical boot in the world to do my 4 or 5 miles every 2 months. So, makes sense, right? Of course not. But I'm a boot guy, and I had such a good experience with my NYX Americana Heritage boot, I wanted to try more of their more purpose-driven, practical boots, and I've been wearing the NYX Tactical for a few weeks now. Gotta say, the break-in is much easier than with the Americana, and I've got some thoughts to share with you, so let's get into it. NYX Handmade Boots is known for their wildland firefighting boots, their work boots, and they have a whole range of more style-oriented heritage boots as well, but they've recently released a tactical boot that covers the high end of that market. Most tactical boots I've seen are in the mid-range, kind of like Danner. They seem to have that whole segment of the market totally cornered. Of course, there's also the Oakley Light Assault boot, and a lot of military members seem to agree that these are best for desk jockeys because the ankle support is pretty weak, but there was nothing out there for boots that were overbuilt, the high end, the Mac Daddy if you will. Well, NYX did it. While anecdotally, I've heard that most Danner tactical boots have anywhere between like 12 and 32 months of life in them, the NYX tactical boot, it's built to last your entire military career, and I'd be happy to bet that these boots last over 10 years, even if you're putting them through their paces, through training and exercises, all that stuff. The NYX Tactical is the sturdiest tactical boot out there. I'm gonna say it. And you could either choose the 8-inch boot, which is kind of the standard tactical boot height, or you can get a 5-inch as well. So I opted for the 5-inch because as a tactical boot, I have very little tact, and my plans for this boot is purely for hiking and camping. NYX calls the 5-inch one, they call this the Marshall, though it's basically the same boot as their tactical, but it's a little shorter and it doesn't have these speed hooks. I'm also going to share some photos and video of this 8-inch version as well, so you'll see that throughout. I picked up a pair of NYX tactical boots in the Coyote Brown Roughout. I'll dive more into the details of the leather a little bit later, but in this case, talking about the color is really important actually. So if you need Coyote Brown for your uniform, you should be okay with this Coyote Brown. In looking up some of the other reviews and kind of doing research on this, some people said that the leather looks a little dark or orange to pass inspection if you have like an AR 670 requirement for your boots. So if that's you, I wanted to say this just to kind of put your mind at ease. So NYX, they sourced their leather for this boot from Seidel in Milwaukee. Seidel, they also supply Danner. So while pictures might make the leather color look a bit off or maybe orange or whatever, it's the same leather color as used by Danner, which is pretty well accepted as kind of the standard for Coyote Brown. In short, if you're thinking about these boots for your military uniform, they're going to fit the code. In terms of construction, I was a bit surprised to see that unlike a lot of NYX boots, the tactical boot doesn't have a full leather build throughout the insole and midsole. NYX uses synthetic materials throughout the insole and the midsole to make these more practical and a lot more shock absorption for soldiers specifically. So I have more details on this in the sole section coming up later. While NYX uses leather from the same tannery Danner uses, there's one huge difference. NYX leather is way thicker. It's crazy. NYX uses a 7 to 8 ounce leather for this tactical boot. You have the smooth black leather option, you have a black roughout, you have the Coyote roughout that you see here, and a Coyote smooth. These are all the same 7 to 8 ounce thickness. Now what you see here, this is the 7 to 8 ounce Weather Shield Coyote Brown roughout leather. This particular leather is excellent for water resistance because during the tanning process, the leather is impregnated with a silicone solution. So it's got an extra layer of waterproofing in there. Now it can be a little bit tricky to care for, but it's fantastic for dynamic situations when you might be in mud or water and you're gonna be wearing it for a long time. So you combine that with the 360-degree stitch down build, and these are practically speaking waterproof. They're not technically waterproof, but practically they are. Now to care for the leather, quite easy. You can just use a suede brush for the rough out leathers, and you can also apply, if you wanted to, a silicone-based waterproofing spray if you'd like, but I really don't think that's necessary. I don't even think I'd recommend that even. I would actually just avoid, I'm not gonna treat the leather at all. I might brush my boot down with a horsehair brush every year or something like that, like very minor, but I'm gonna let this leather age like a fine wine. NYX is using a different construction method than usual. This uses stitch down construction around the entirety of the boot, which increases the weather resistance considerably, and that's a little different. Normally the stitch down is kind of like 270 degree, or even sometimes it's just like 180 degrees, but this is stitched down all the way around. Another big difference here is that NYX is also using some more modern materials, specifically for better shock absorption. So the insole is a rubber slip sole, and the midsole is 8IR rubber, which is a synthetic isoprene rubber. So while a lot of boot enthusiasts rave about NYX for their natural, old-fashioned way of boot making, the tactical boot kind of beefs things up with some more modern materials. Now inside the boot, you still get a removable 6 to 7 ounce veg tan piece of leather as the footbed, and you can replace that with a custom insert or just leave it in. I think one of the things they wanted to achieve with this is because they were using more synthetics throughout it for that shock absorption, they wanted to still give that element of when you slip on a pair of boots and they fit perfectly and they kind of have that, your feet has compressed that leather. So they still wanted to add that element into these boots and kind of keep that, because that's part of what a Knicks boot is and what like a heritage boot is. So you can add this in there, and I'm keeping my leather insert in there because it does, you can already see it's starting to break in a little bit. You can kind of see my toe imprint right there, so it's pretty cool. The outsole is a Vibram Sierra outsole, and there's a fatty PU wedge right in here, and that helps a ton with shock absorption. So they say this wedge is military grade. I don't know what that means, but it definitely sounds cool, so happy about that. Knicks has kept the leather shank in this boot and the leather heel counter as well. So while they've replaced a lot of the leather with rubber, some of the key points are still all leather and have that kind of durability. One of the benefits of choosing Knicks is that you can have your boots custom built to your feet. And if you have an uncommon sized foot, you can still get that with Knicks. Now me, I'm a 10.5D on the Brannick, which is probably the most common foot size in history. So I ordered the 10D and they fit great. I have to point out that these boots are so hard to get on, and I actually strained my back trying to get them on the second time. More recently, I was trying them on and like my arm went numb for 3 hours. So I definitely recommend a shoehorn. Maybe I'm getting old, but once these get on, they fit great. The ankle support is a lot more shape. The heel counter, because the leather is a little bit thicker, I don't know, whatever it was pretty hard to get on. Luckily they had this heel loop, but with a shoehorn that helped a lot. But yeah, I had some health issues trying to get these. These aren't the easiest boots to break in, but they are significantly easier to break in compared to the wax leather that I had with the Knicks Americana. With the rough out leather and all the shock absorbent material in here, I was able to wear them all day the first time without any problems. That said, they still do require a greater break-in compared to your average boots, and that is because of the 7 to 8 ounce leather. There's plenty of it. There's a lot of leather. It's thick leather. But that said, if you're getting these boots for active duty service, you know, I'd maybe spend some time breaking them in a bit before going on any long marches or trainings or anything like that. I can see that being the leather being a little too intense for doing something major the first time you wear them. But honestly, like, besides, it would take 8 hours of wearing them before they're pretty much fully broken in terms of the leather being loose enough to not cause any problems. The Knicks tactical boot is the sturdiest tactical boot out there. There are some drawbacks of shopping with Knicks. For one, these boots cost over $500 and they can take between 4 to 8 months to arrive, but that is the price of quality, baby. I checked the lead times, and the shorter Marshall boot that I have right here, this one, its lead time is more around 2 to 3 months right now, though that lead time is always subject to change. So if you're watching this in the future, or even by the time this comes out, it might be different. This is because I think right now, particularly, Knicks is shifting their attention more to their wildland fire boots as fire season's on the way, and they're kind of outfitting all those firefighters with these awesome chunky boots. So I can get behind that. Overall, the Knicks tactical, it might not be for everyone, but it definitely hits a part of the market for tactical boots that I think was way underserved. I feel like a lot of brands were pushing for cheaper and lighter and more comfortable, and you know, prime example is this Oakley light assault boot. It's been a race in that direction, but Knicks basically created a completely new type of boot with this super beefy tactical style. They brought in the thicker leather and the stitch down construction that kind of characterizes Pacific Northwest boot making, and they did a few things to modernize it to give it you know, the shock absorption that you'd need if you were a soldier or you're running or marching long distances. So it's a really unique boot. It's a really interesting boot, and I could tell you for one thing, I'm never going to need another hiking boot as long as I live, so got to give credit to Knicks for that. And overall, I'm a big fan of the Knicks Tactical.